Hey there, welcome to the Soul Bridge podcast. My name is Sarah Primrose and I am your host. And this is another episode of Manna Monday. It's just another Manna Monday. Well, fully healed now. We are just going to jump right into the episode today. And this episode today, I hope will bring you manna for the week. And I hope that it will bring you encouragement in your own healing journey. And so what do I mean by that? Well, today's episode is all about when healing changes the social dynamic. So I was going through YouTube, kind of searching on this topic, and I think it's something that we hear of, especially with these buzzwords out there of like, so-and-so is a narcissist, so-and-so doesn't want you to change, they want you to feed their narcissism. Great. Okay, here's the thing about that. As a mental health professional, that is a buzzword. Not everybody is a narcissist. Not everybody is so completely full of themselves that they are walking the earth looking for victims and this predatory kind of thing. So first and foremost, I just want you to have an open mind. As we're talking about this episode, I want to challenge your theology when it comes to what we hear in the secular world versus how scripture backs it up. Because scripture is truly true all the time. It never changes. In the thousands of years since scripture has been around, and as it has, even in its different translations, right? It has consistently been true to life and human nature. So it doesn't say anything in there about narcissism. Just want to throw that out there as a mental health professional. There is a real thing called narcissistic personality disorder, but let's just remember that sometimes Satan will put things in the world that causes disunity. So the purpose, though, of today's message is to talk a little bit about healing and your sanctification journey. So this could be healing in many, many ways, right? You could be healing in a physical way, a mental way, emotional way, even spiritually. There's lots of church hurt in the world, right? Whatever form your healing takes shape, people around you are going to notice. People in your social circle will start to see a difference. And especially when the Lord shows up and you start to maybe look a little happier, look a little lighter, right? It's going to cause some dissension possibly, and it possibly might cause some confusion or even jealousy. Who knows, right? Human nature is unpredictable, bottom line. But what I really want to focus on today is that healing, and if someone in your life, for example, is not healing at the same level you are, or maybe they're not changing at all. Maybe they're kind of in denial or don't really see the need for change, right? As people, we are creatures of habit. We are creatures of patterns. When our theology, essentially our way of being, starts to be questioned or gets shaken up a little bit, we're very animalistic, right? We're like, what's happening? But sometimes when others around us are maybe stuck in themselves or even a little discontent with our own healing, we can see it, though, as the presence of God is making them and us question our own divinity. Hear me out. Healing indicates the presence of something bigger than us. It indicates the presence of God in any form that healing takes. Today's episode really just kind of breaks it down into looking at the different scriptures where Jesus comes and heals people on the Sabbath. So I chose these scriptures specifically because we seem to have rules in our mind and in our society about when it's appropriate to heal, when it's not appropriate to heal, right? So as a Christian, street ministry is something that's huge, right? Not everybody's cut out for it. The appropriate way in the world, according to the world, to be healed is to go to the doctor, to have this sort of privilege, to have this other authoritative figure say, yes, I will allow you to heal by giving you this medication if you have the insurance, if you have the money. Healing in the streets, taking medicine to the streets, highly taboo, right? And that's exactly what Jesus did. So when Jesus was out healing people, and there's a few examples here in the Gospels of Mark, Luke, and Matthew, when it talks specifically about Jesus healing on the Sabbath. So if you're not super familiar with what the Sabbath really means, in Jewish culture, the Sabbath was a way for us, for God's people, for the Jews at that time, when Moses gave the law to the Jews, to stop work, to sit with God, and to make sure that they were tending to their spiritual condition and the way that they were spending time with God. So over time, this became much less of a spiritual activity and more of a you have to do this activity, which completely negates the purpose of it, right? So the whole purpose of God giving us the Sabbath was in order to stop working and spend time with Him. Yes, work is necessary in the material world. We have to tend to things. We have to cook for our families. We have to tend to the sheep or the flocks or our, civil servant jobs, whatever it is. Of course, we have to do those things, and God knows that. And oftentimes He calls us to do those things, right? But it's also important to sit with Him.
Running a business is hard. Staying compliant shouldn't be. At Clearinghouse C, TPA and Background Check, we help employers meet Department of Transportation and FMCSA drug and alcohol testing requirements without confusion or stress. We serve businesses across multiple industries. In transportation and trucking, we manage DOT drug testing, driver background checks, and clearinghouse reporting. In healthcare, we provide pre-employment drug testing and license checks to help keep patients safe. And in manufacturing and logistics, we support safety-sensitive roles with customized testing programs. As your trusted consortium and third-party administrator, we manage random testing, reporting, records, and required follow-ups, all online and fully supported. We're NDASA verified and provide FCRA-compliant background checks, so you can hire with confidence and stay audit-ready. Clearinghouse C, TPA and background checks, simple, reliable, compliant. Visit clearinghousectpabgc.org or call 415-714-7778 today. Scan the QR code to get started.
So the Pharisees in these three Gospels were at this time following Jesus around, just looking to catch him up on something because he had started to reveal who he was. He started to reveal his divinity. He started to let them know, hey, I am God. I am the Lord. I am the one who is here to save everybody. And the Pharisees, of course, this questioned their theology. This questioned their idea that God was inaccessible to regular people. So when God was out in his street ministry, when God was out healing people who were seen as the lowest of the low in society, beggars, blind people, men and women who were unclean, right? Remember the story of the woman who had been bleeding for 12 years, just touching the hem of Jesus's garment. Her faith saved her that day, and Jesus allowed it, right? Imagine going to the doctor today. Imagine going to the doctor's office with faith, just saying, I know that if you give me one pill, my cancer will be healed. It would never check out. It would never check out. Okay, so the three Gospels that I want to draw your attention to today, and I'm not going to read all the way through each one of them just for the sake of time. So in Mark 1:21-28, and Luke 4:31-37, we see Jesus cast out a demon on the Sabbath in the synagogue. And at that time, once again, the Pharisees were just looking to catch him up. They were looking to disprove his own claim of his own divinity. And they were looking to cause disunity in the community. The community was starting to take notice of Jesus at this time. And as we see him on his healing street ministry, the Pharisees were constantly just following him around. They were like stalking him at this point. And it's at this point where not only does Jesus show his authority over evil, he proves to people that he has a compassion for those who absolutely need it. The Pharisees at this time tried to convince people that Jesus is of Satan. They try to say, yeah, he's casting out the demon because he basically created them. He is Beelzebub. He's using the power of Beelzebub to cast out demons. And Jesus is like, that doesn't even make any sense. He's like, if Satan were against his own house, he wouldn't be successful in doing all of the evil that he does. And so Jesus comes in and says, look, I am in charge here. I am going to heal people on the Sabbath. There's nothing you can do about it. I am Lord, right? I am God. I am of goodness. I am not of Beelzebub. So then in Mark 1, Matthew 8, and Luke 4, Jesus then does a private healing, and he heals Peter's mother-in-law of a fever on the Sabbath. And what we see here is Jesus's compassion steps over the letter of the law of the Sabbath, of not be supposed to do anything. So for Jesus, right, he is God, and God's goodness and God's good character and God's compassion and God's mercy and God's, all of that is embodied in Jesus and who he is. He can't do other things. So when he sees that someone needs help, the time is then. He's not going to ignore them. He's not going to say, oh, it's the Sabbath, sorry, gotta wait another day, and allow that person to potentially die. That's not what Jesus is going to do. But what I love about this one, where he heals Peter's mother-in-law, is that he shows a very personal compassion. He shows this personal relationship. And just to bring it back to our own healing and sanctification journey, this is the compassion that we see on a very interpersonal, relational level with Jesus now. So when you are on your healing journey, no matter what form it takes, like I said, it could be mental, physical, spiritual, whatever, or all of them, we have this personal relationship with Jesus that he tends to. He tenders to us. He shapes us, right? We are not in charge of that. We are not in charge of the healing. He does it by his terms, by his goodness, and at the right time. And that's what he does for Peter's mother-in-law. And he proves to the disciples after this situation where the Pharisees are like trying to plant these seeds of like, oh yeah, he's Beelzebub. He then again shows in a private way. He's not showcasing and doing all of these big, giant public miracles. The miracles happen one-on-one more often than not with Jesus through his interpersonal compassion. So up to now, thanks for listening. We'll be right back.
Life doesn't have a rewind button. But change is possible, and we are here to support you. At Inspired Elite Solutions, we provide supportive and structured education programs designed to help individuals grow, rebuild, and move forward. On our website, you'll find a wide range of courses like substance abuse education, anger management, community reentry, parenting courses, gambling and theft prevention, DUI and substance abuse classes for non-California residents, and workplace drug and alcohol safety training. All courses are clear, respectful, and easy to understand. Get started today. Scan the QR code or call 916-415-8707. Inspired Elite Solutions, education that empowers.
All right, welcome back. So this next one is my favorite and such a powerful message as to who Jesus is, and that our laws, our rules, the way that we humans do things, God doesn't bow to us. And in our healing journey, we must remember that if God calls us to something, he's not going to stop your healing journey because someone in your life is discontent about it. If he has called you to heal from something or to be delivered from something, he's going to pursue that until the end. He's going to complete the good work that he has started in you. So the one story that really makes a statement about Jesus's power and authority and his presence is when Jesus heals the man with the withered hand. And we see this in Mark 3, Matthew 12, and Luke 6. So there's a little bit of pre-context here. So Jesus and his disciples are on the way to temple on the Sabbath. And I have an inkling that Jesus knew the withered man was there and that he was going to heal and interact with the Pharisees in this way. But Jesus and his disciples are on their way to the temple. They stop at a field. They're gathering some wheat to eat. They were hungry. And the Pharisees, of course, they had been following him. They were stalking him. They were trying to just catch him in a lie and disprove him, which they couldn't do. But I love this part of the story because this is our precursor to what Jesus then does in the temple. But the Pharisees catch him up and they're like, hey, they can't be eating the wheat. They can't do that. It's the Sabbath. And Jesus turns to them and he's like, I am the Sabbath. He turns to them and he says, I am Lord. This wouldn't exist without me. You remember this story in David when David was hungry and he went and ate the bread that was in the temple and he wasn't supposed to do that? God gave him grace for that. Like, I am graceful. I am the Sabbath. I have grace over these things. If my people are hungry, they're going to eat, right? And so the Pharisees kind of scuttle off. I imagine, okay, the Bible doesn't say that they scuttle. I imagine that the Pharisees just scuttle away in their robes and they end up at the temple. So Jesus and his disciples go to the temple. They see the man with the withered hand. And this is kind of where the three different eyewitness testimonies in Matthew, Mark, and Luke do sort of change the details just a bit. But the main point of this is that Jesus is going to heal his people no matter what day it is. And so Jesus sees the man with the withered hand. He tells him, get up, stretch out your hand, and he heals his hand and he's back to normal. So the Pharisees then question him. They say, are you allowed to do that? Can you heal on the Sabbath? And Jesus again says, I am more important than the temple. God has sent one who is bigger than the temple. He is bigger than this thing that you have created. And truly, that's the whole point of this message, is that Jesus is Lord. He is Lord on the Sabbath. And the illustration that Jesus gives to us here is, if one of your sheep falls in a hole on the Sabbath, are you going to leave it there? Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath? Is it lawful to do evil? Is it lawful to kill? Or is it lawful to let people live? And then he flips this on the Pharisees and he catches them in their own stuff. He catches them in their own lies and he catches them in their own disunity and their own way of seeing that he is God. He has all authority over all things. All right, stay tuned for just a quick message from one of our sponsors.
Got a DOT drug or alcohol violation? Not sure what comes next? SAP Solutions is here to help. We provide DOT-required SAP evaluations for commercial drivers and safety-sensitive employees. At SAP Solutions, we guide you from start to finish, from your initial evaluation to education or treatment recommendations, and stay with you through the entire process, including any required follow-up, so you're never left guessing what comes next. You'll meet with a certified substance abuse professional who will review your situation and clearly explain the steps you need to take to return to work safely and legally. Everything is handled professionally, confidentially, and in full DOT compliance. We also support employers by helping them navigate FMCSA and clearinghouse requirements, so compliance is simple and stress-free. Visit www.dotsap.center or give us a call at 916-256-8714. Let us help you get back to work with confidence.
When Jesus questions their theology, it causes a lot of social disunity, obviously, because the Pharisees end up getting into cahoots with the Romans to kill Jesus, as we know. But that healing that Jesus was doing was changing every social dynamic that had ever existed. And he was drawing attention to people that had been dismissed, that had been excluded from society. And Jesus's people were suddenly taking a forefront. And he was showing up with his compassion and making regular people, at least people who thought they were really good people, he was making them question their own sense of self. So, circling back to the beginning, how does healing change the social dynamic? When Jesus healed that man and many of the other healings along the way, it changed the way that people saw God. God showed up to where the healing were. He didn't wait for them to come to the temple. He didn't wait for them to become Pharisees to heal them, because he knew that the way that society had been set up was impossible for people because of sin, right? So let's take us back even further to the fallen world. Sin was inhibiting us in our pride from allowing others into the space where God would be able to heal them. God was not residing in inaccessible places, and he was not abiding by the letter of the law, such as the Pharisees. And that's what the Pharisees were also teaching people. So when Jesus was calling the Pharisees vipers, it's because the Pharisees were teaching people that if you don't follow the letter of the law, you're not going to find the grace of God. You're not going to find this healing. You're not going to find whatever it is, thing that they were teaching. And the most messed up part about that is the privilege that they held, the privilege and authority that they held. That basically they're born into this. They weren't necessarily poverty-ridden, ill people becoming Pharisees. They were men who were born into this type of situation. Suffice all that to say, in modern day, if you're beginning a healing journey, or maybe you've been on your journey for quite some time, just want to remind you that God is with you. And if you choose to disclose your healing to anybody around you, or maybe they even start to take notice of it, and maybe they're starting to treat you different, just remember that it's not actually about you, and it's not actually about them. It's about the fact that God's presence is evident. And that fact alone makes people question their own sense of power. Maybe in your life, maybe in their own lives, I'm not sure, but it makes us question our own sense of power. With the introduction of sin also came rebellion and our human desire to resist the goodness of God. Sin caused a warped distortion of the way that we experience God. So your healing journey might cause some interesting behavioral reactions from others. It might change the way that you communicate with other people, and it might be painful, or in some cases you might simply outgrow relationships. But I'm here to encourage you to keep growing and healing on your journey. Please don't abandon that journey that God has given to you specifically to heal and deliver you from something. Each season of our lives is specifically designed for us and is meant to shape us and ready us for the full experience of God when we go to heaven. This material world will pass away so fast, and healing is part of the sanctification process. It is God's work to comply with the nature of His goodness, grace, and mercy. That being said, if you're in one of these tricky situations where you're healing from something and the social relationships around you are just different, it changes the dynamic in some kind of way, just remember to pray for them. Pray for people who are seeming to persecute you. And remember that on your healing journey, you might be a little more sensitive because your own foundations are being shaken. Your own strongholds are being torn down. Pray for those around you that they would heal, that they would get to know the compassionate, interpersonal, super close relationship of Jesus Christ, that they would humble themselves before God in their own healing journeys. One more reminder, if you pray that prayer and then you are no longer a part of that person's life, don't take it personally. You may not be able to be a witness to the things that you pray for, but God will bring redemption over every single pain that you experience in life, every hurt, everything that you get caught up on. If you let Him, God will redeem you and He will show you how wonderful and compassionate He is. Then, be a light. Testify to the goodness and healing that God has given you so that others might not feel alone in their own healing journeys. So thanks for listening. If you enjoyed listening to this content today and you want to hear some more, consider becoming a supporter. It's as simple as buying a coffee. You can go to www.buymeacoffee.com/soulbridgepod, or you can scan the yellow QR code whenever that comes up. You can also donate directly on the SoulBridge Foundation website. So as I've explained before, and I'll explain again real quick for new listeners, SoulBridge Podcast is an outreach ministry of the nonprofit SoulBridge Foundation. SoulBridge Foundation's main purpose is to offer practical resources and different types of things within the community to help people. Our overarching main goal is to help people go from homelessness to home ownership. We are in early stages of development, so we're not quite at that goal yet. However, we do offer community resources to other nonprofits in the area for supplemental education. And if you just want to comment, you want to be a part of SoulBridge Foundation, or even apply to be on the podcast, feel free to do that on their website as well and fill out the contact form. We are currently looking for volunteers and board members. We'll be looking for board members until the end of May. At that time, applications will close. But if you're interested and you think that your leadership skills or that you have some other applicable skills that might benefit SoulBridge Foundation, Once again, go to the website www.soulbridgefoundation.org and look at the volunteer tab. You can see which board positions we have open. You can also apply to be a volunteer there if you're more of a hands-on person and not into leadership as much. We are looking for volunteers as well. In any case, we wouldn't be able to do this without you. Anything that you decide to donate in any way that you support, whether it's through volunteerism or direct donation, helps us do our part in the Great Commission. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, all the best. God bless. Toodaloo!